No, we need to edit that. Oops, Piano Tech Radio. Hello, everyone. We're about to get started. Okay. Got it. And let's let the people in. Let's see. Admit all. Rock and roll. We'll make you co-host. Hello, everyone. Great to see you. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's going to be another fun Saturday session. And we welcome you all on this fun, I guess, 4th of July weekend. Glad to have you joining us. We've won the competition with the barbecue right now, or maybe I wouldn't put it past some of you to have a barbecue rolling in the background while we're hanging out today. So I've had some fun. We're actually traveling. I was in New York last week, and I'm back again this week. This time a little bit more relaxing, just kind of hanging out, doing some house sitting for a friend. So it's been nice kind of hanging out in this New York, Brooklyn setting in the summertime. And hopefully we'll have a nice 4th as well. Okay, cool. Well, everyone's pretty much jumped in here. I'm going to get started. Morgan's getting his computer set up, but we'll get rolling. And I'll spotlight myself. We'll do our intro, and then we'll start chit-chatting about today's topics. So 1 minute, and I'll get rolling with that. So welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and more, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, helping each other, and creating an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. It's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, and we will. I think that'll be on our agenda, maybe even later today, Morgan, to get your official bio during these sessions. But I'll go back to my old standby. My co-host, recently added co-host in the past few weeks and months, is Morgan Cowell. He joins us from the good old center of this fine country on this 4th of July. He's in Nebraska. He's trained professionally on the coast in Boston at North Bennett Street School, and returned to his home area to build a fine little piano business there in Middle America. So a very piano technician thing to do. But yeah, so anyways, he's our co-host, and I'm Ethan Janney. I won't introduce myself. Most of you folks know who I am, but kind of the initiator of these projects and piano tech myself, as well as other interesting things. So Morgan and I had a little chat, and last week we talked about some interesting topics, and we had a rousing conversation. I mean, we had some things on the agenda. I think some of them will come back because we didn't fully cover them, but we ended up talking about a topic that we've talked about before, but from some different angles. We talked about pricing a little bit. We talked about it, though, from the perspective of kind of what's going on with the economy right now. I myself actually really am appreciative that we have this resource where we can come together and sort of talk about these common issues. I don't know if it's just my perspective. I think it's really it's a global thing. things have been changing so much over the past few years with the pandemic and the economy, and just even what we're doing right now. A lot of things are moving online that haven't been previously, and the business is changing. Piano technology, it's gone from part of it's due to us all coming together and being able to communicate, but it's gone from sort of like an isolated every person for themselves profession. People are coming together, they're building a little bit larger businesses, they're focusing a little bit more on the high end. So it's really good to have this resource where we can all kind of share our perspective and see what's going on. So yeah, last week we talked about a little about pricing, what kind of strategies we take with our clientele. Do we just have our schedule fully booked so we make sure we're not sort of wasting any time? We had Carl Lieberman, an oft participant in these sessions, vociferously share his opinions that he likes to always keep some free time in his calendar so he can be that Johnny on the spot for those specialty clients that are so important for him to serve, his recording studios and concert halls and things like that. But it was interesting. Everybody had some different opinions, and we talked about the different sides of those opinions as well. And I think we want to continue a bit of that conversation today. Some other topics on the agenda, could be things like we touched upon last week, some hiring an admin versus doing things independently, doing things yourself. Some of those non-piano tech related tasks. Also, again, we touched upon it last time, but like how much time we want to work, versus how much time we want to take off. It's easy to get sucked into scheduling all your time as work and not utilizing the fact that we're independent technicians. On the other hand, there's the issue of, you're independent. So you have to be the one who's doing the bookings and, making your schedule. And maybe you're being a little bit lazy, and you have to account for that. So there's different ends of the spectrum we all have to deal with on those. And there's some discussion to be had about how to approach that. I think something, we have the honor of having several folks in our community here who've been in the business for quite a while. And we may even be able to touch upon today this idea of, I don't know, I think it's going to be different for everybody, but I'll put it in the general category of like selling your business, right? Or passing it along, or, sharing it with someone else, whatever that may be. I'd love to get some perspective from the audience on those particular topics and see if we can help each other, come up with the best approaches for that stuff. But those are my thoughts. Morgan, do you have anything you want to add before we actually dive into having the conversation?
No, that all sounds pretty good. I'm actually curious, what are the fireworks like in your part of the country? Because here in the Midwest, everybody, like every street corner has a tent, and you can fire it up until like 12 o'clock at night. And it's a war zone around here.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, so I have two different parts of the country I can comment on. So Chicago, that's where I live right now, but I'm not there. And I believe that most of the sort of big fireworks are not for sale, right? In Chicago, it's probably some type of ordinance or something like that. But there's this thing where you go over into the border into Indiana, which sounds like it's kind of similar to your territory there, where it's like you said, there's a big warehouses full of fireworks, and they know, even though it's not sanctioned, everybody just going over the border, they're picking up a bunch of fireworks in Indiana, and then bringing them back to Chicago to cause a little bit of trouble, and have a little bit of fun, and maybe blow a finger off or something here and there. But here in New York, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's similar. Like you don't see people selling a lot of fireworks that you can imagine. It's so jam packed, especially in Manhattan, giving people the ability to have fireworks. Think about it on the subway or something like that. Absolute disaster. So I don't know the laws around here, but I'm pretty sure they're either similar to Chicago and Illinois or more strict. But that having been said, of course, this is New York City. So the fireworks displays, of course, they're going to go all out. The Statue of Liberty is literally right there, and they're going to be, making the fireworks go off around it and incorporating in the thing. So I don't think you can get a more, a bigger spectacle than New York City for on the 4th of July for fireworks. So I don't know. Those are my comments. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Also, I remember when I was a kid, it's actually really terrible to use the word kid and tell this story at the same time. I think I was in like, oh man, I must have been in 5th grade or something, 4th, 5th grade. So you got to imagine I'm like, I don't know, what is that, 11 years old, 12 years old. And they would sell fireworks to kids over at like the local, just like the local convenience store or something like that. It was they totally shouldn't have been doing that. And I remember we'd have like a Roman candle or some other fireworks we shouldn't have. And we'd be like these 12-year-old kids in the alley, like messing around. Looking back, that was not good. Both the people that sold them to us and the fact that the parents weren't keeping a close enough eye on it were the problem. Anyways, all right. Well, anything else you have to say about fireworks from your end, Morgan?
No, they're loud.
Okay.
They smell. I like them a lot, but yeah, by about 2:00 on the 4th, all right, I've heard enough. But
yeah. When I was from Michigan, I lived in Michigan. I grew up there. I'm pretty sure it was the same, kind of a little bit more liberal. I think it has to go along with like the amount of rural space you have. And also, yeah, the more kind of, I don't know what you call it. It's almost like a libertarian lifestyle. Hey, I've got my property. I do what I want on it. Give me those fireworks and I'll fire them off. But yeah, so let's pop into these things, one by one as we talked about them, and we'll move through them quickly if there's not much more to say. But let's talk about this on-demand versus fully booked piano tech. I think, Morgan, from what I've heard from you, you do tend to lean towards this, like, I like to work. Let me work. I'm going to work a lot. Fill my schedule. I have a lot of other things I do, so I might tend to enjoy a more liberal schedule, and then I'll do some other things at the free time, or have that possibility to be on the spot, like Carl said. But that having been said, it's a lot easier to just keep the revenue coming through and keep the business afloat if there's always some business happening. So I don't know. I'd love to just touch upon that a little bit more and see what people in the audience have to say about that as well. But yeah, any other further comments on that? Why, have you thought about keeping a lighter schedule? And if you did, why would you?
so what I do to accommodate those last minute requests is I do have office staff that will move things around. I can send someone else to go do a tuning, or there's times where I will call one of my longtime clients and say, hey, the symphony just called, right? There's a concert tonight. Do you mind if I come Saturday morning at 10? And most times, right, they don't care. So I don't intentionally leave a space for them, but we do accommodate as best we can. Now, if you have a spin it, like 2 hours away, I'm sorry, we can't help you, right? But there's certain things where we do make accommodations for. I don't tune all of the time. Like you, I do have like other time that set aside for other things, workshop stuff or regulation or rebuilding or just personal time off. But when I am tuning, like when I have a day that's set to tune, I'm tuning. I mean, I will do as many as I can. I'll do about 5 or 10 minutes. I take a buffer between appointments, and I can do as many as 7 or 8 in a day. I start at 7. I get home about 7:00, and it's a full day. But I like to do that. It utilizes the time well, and I get to work with a lot of great people. So
now I'm curious, like in terms of the long term on that, like you've been doing that, trying to keep that probably gradually ramped up since you started. It might have been a little bit slower, but what has it been, like 7 or 8 years that you've been at it? Or
Yep.
So and that's been your attitude. You're growing the business, though. You're bringing other people on. Do you see yourself doing that, like the next 8 to 10 years, keeping that clip of doing be it tuning or shop work or whatever pretty consistently throughout the day, or do you see it changing? And part of the reason I ask is just for sheer reason of like repetitive strain injuries and stuff like that. I've heard some people, I did a lot of before I get the answer to the question, I'll tell why I asked that. There was this guy who was, he was a pretty well-respected piano tech, a lot of skills under his belt, a lot of knowledge, stuff like that. I had been doing calls to piano techs throughout the country and the world as I was researching for some of these business projects that I might be starting, including this one, just to see what people needed. That, you know, education came out as one, and that's why we're doing this. But I talked to this guy who literally was completely retired from piano tech, not out of not wanting to do it. He had some elbow issue that developed. It got really serious. And he told me, you know, that's what he was. He was like tuning basically back to back piano tunings. And he didn't realize what was happening, and then kind of wore himself down. And now he was, I mean, he was doing some other gig, like completely different. He was like a salesperson in a store, not even a piano store. So, but he was pretty knowledgeable, which was interesting because he wasn't applying that anymore. But anyways, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Are you thinking about that? Are you planning for that? You know, there's also just other protocols, stretching, like, you know, keeping things, having ways of recover and rest and stuff. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. In a month, say like August, it's not uncommon for me to do well over 100 tunings, sometimes pushing 200, and that's too much. That's not a sustainable path. That's not a good idea. In my situation right now, and what's happening across the country, is that in certain areas there's just more demand than we have technicians, right? It's also the college season time, and so you have to get these 50 pianos tuned up in a week or two, and so you have to make it happen. So a long-term goal is to not have that be, a reality, and to get back down to the 3 or 4, like max 5 a day. I'm still figuring out how to facilitate that. Just because there's just so much demand and so much kind of high level stuff that we do. The same goes with the workshop kind of things. I think we have a waiting list for regulations right now. It's about 20 pianos long. So sure, I could take Saturday off, but I could also work and knock out most of a regulation, and that goes towards like vacations and retirement. So yeah, I'm still working on that balance. The economy is still kind of weird. It was weird during COVID. I mean, we went from having, all this business to no business, and now it's picking back up again. So, I'm hesitant to turn anything away. I just kind of like with a personal kind of fear type thing. But yeah, I wouldn't say what I'm doing is necessarily healthy, but I am hiring people, trying to expand. So I'm working on becoming healthier. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's good. And I think also, like, I remember when I first started tuning, I had a similar, I would just do as many, I would get the calls, I wouldn't turn anything down. Somebody would even say, yeah, I've been calling. I just called like 3 guys and they just said they didn't have time, but they want to tune a piano, and I'd be like, I'll take it, and I was doing a lot. And I think also that's just a thing too. Like when you're getting out and getting started, it's nice to kind of get some money in the bank and get the work and not turn it down. And also, a good heuristic for whether you have a good business is whether people are coming to you, right? If you have to go out there and sell yourself and you're hustling too hard to get people, maybe you're not in the right business. So yeah, you don't want to turn that down. You want to take advantage of it. And if the work is there, like you said, you expand your business in such a way that you can support that demand. Yeah, I think that's pretty great. So I'm going to actually create a couple polls because I'm wanting to ask people the questions, but I'm going to create it here on the back end, and maybe we can formulate them together so we get the right questions here. So I want to ask, how much do you tune? All right. And then I'm going to ask 2 questions. One is going to be, how many tunings do you do per week, right? Let's ask that. And I guess I would say choice 1, maybe less than 5, right? Because most people are going to do at least that many. And then somewhere between 6 and 10, that would be kind of like a modest amount. And then maybe 11 to, what should be the next range? 20? How many do you say you would do a week on average?
If
Morgan?
I'm tuning 6 days a week,
Mhm.
I'm doing at least I'm doing at least 30.
Okay. So yeah, so I'll do 11 to 20, and then I'll do 21 to 30, and we'll see what we get. Those sounds like
Yeah.
good ranges.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'm very curious as well, and this is anonymous, folks, so whatever. I want to add a question, which is how many tunings would you like to do per week? Because maybe some people are doing less and they'd like to do more, or maybe they're doing more and they'd like to do less.
Well, this kind of goes into what we talked about last week and what people, I think we kind of just, our business kind of just arrives in our lap, rather than actually like planning it out yourself. So like, for example, if you want to make $100,000 gross, great. How many pianos would you like to tune in a week or in a day? Is it 8? Is it 4? Is it 2? Okay. So if you want to do like 2 pianos a day, which is kind of what Carl does, that would be about 9 or 10 pianos a week if you're working 5 days. And if you work for 50 weeks out of the year, that's what, 500 tunings? Okay. So if you charge 200 a tuning, that's your number, right? Doing 2 pianos a day, assuming you could be full.
Right.
So, if you want to do 3, then you can go down from that. And it's working backwards kind of from what you want and then how much you want to work. So for some people that don't want to work that much, but still want to live comfortably, then maybe your goal should be to find those higher end clients that don't mind paying a little bit more. And then you set yourself up to be this kind of better service that people would pay a little bit extra for. And that's when you have these technicians that do, between, 5 and 15 a week still, but they're done by 3:00 and they take nice long vacations, and they're very happy and their bodies are happy and healthy. And that's kind of the intentionality that we talked about last week.
Right.
That polls like this will kind of help us see,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. So I've got these 2 questions. I'm kind of wanting to ask one more. Let's see if I can add it. But here we go. Add question. And the last one is going to be how much would you like to tune more or less? Because I don't know if we'll get that. Would you like to tune more or less? And we'll just put more and less. And that'll be cool to see. Hopefully we'll get some participation. All right, so save. And now let's see if I'm able to do this. Nice. All right, we review. How many tunings do you do per week? Got all the questions and answers. How many tunings would you like to do per week? We got all those. All right, let's do this. Okay, so the poll should be live. And we have at least 26 of you guys, including me and Morgan. So let's you and me answer. We might as well. Well, actually, I can't. But Morgan, if you want to answer. And yeah, it should be live. So yeah, let's get you guys answers. And we'll let those answers roll in. We'll talk a little bit more and then we'll revisit it. But yeah, please participate. I think we have 1 answer so far. We've got 2. Let's get them rolling in, folks. Let me know if you have a question about how to do the answering.
There's a question from Russell asking,
Yeah.
Is there a shortage of tuners in your area? And I can't speak to the whole country, but with the exception of the Boston area and maybe certain suburbs, I believe the country is undersaturated with technicians. If you disagree, please let us know in the comments because I'd be curious about that. But I have friends in Chicago and Kansas City and in St. Louis, and they are having a similar issue where they're booking up, through September right now with no end in sight, and they're drowning in a good way, but they know it's not sustainable. And they know that if they say no to all these clients, then they're going to have to go even further, right, to get someone to come down. And for certain parts of Missouri, for example, they may have to go about like several hundred miles to find, a competent tuner.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and we'll just let these answers roll a little bit more. Definitely would like a couple more people to answer. So feel free to get in there and answer the question. Should have a same as an option for question 3. That's true. For question 3, I guess just choose like if it's a little bit more or a little bit less. Let's see. I can't add an answer, but that's a good point. Yeah. So a part of this too is the price point. Like I'll tell you. So when I moved to New York City. I think this is a relevant story. It's very interesting. So when I was in Chicago, before I moved to New York City, this like after I graduated from university, several years, I had been tuning for a little bit. I had a lot of experience under my belt, but I stopped for like a year, and I hadn't tuned in Chicago yet because I had moved home. I took some time off, did some other things. Then I got into business, and I wanted to build my clientele. So of course, when I was building my clientele, I was in this mode where I was saying, I want a discounted rate. I just want to get clients in the door. And my whole strategy was, actually, my strategy was just to provide really great value to folks, and that word would spread. And really, it worked quite well. And this was before I had even heard of like Yelp and these like review services. And one day I just did, again, just trying to do an incredible job, did a great job on this guy's piano. And he said, have you heard of Yelp? And I said, no, I haven't. He's like, oh, you got to be on Yelp. And he gave me my very first review on Yelp. And it was fun, it was fun and entertaining, because sometimes people like to make fun reviews on Yelp, not just like positive reviews. And it was really a great start to something special, because that got me more business, that got me more reviews. And my point in telling that is I started to think about it as I would be charging less for my tunings, but that not as a quid pro quo, but that my clients would see that the extra value is there, and as a form of payment, right, for that extra value that they didn't have to pay cash for, they'd just be slightly more motivated to pop in a nice review. And to be, and I would encourage them to, not heavily, but I say, hey, I'll remind you, like, if you'd like to give a review. And that strategy worked really well. And really interestingly, when I moved from Chicago to New York, I thought I would have to start my business over, but the way Yelp worked at the time, I could just change the location of my business, which is pretty awesome, because all of a sudden I was the top rated tuner in New York. I was the top rated tuner in Chicago. I became the top rated tuner in New York because I changed my business address. And then I was able to use the same strategy here and get a lot of business, but I was keeping a relatively low price point. And I was fine with that. But then I started having other technicians on staff, and I was still maintaining a low price point. And at a certain point, I don't know, it just seemed like it was too low. It was just too low of a price point. And I started going in a different direction and say, let's not worry about the volume. Let's not worry as much about, just trying to capture those reviews just from having a really, really low price, but maybe just more on the quality of the service and things like that. And I sort of went in a different direction and decided to change. So I've been on all ends of the spectrum, but there is a thing where if you do charge, it depends on your location. But if you do charge less, if you're the lowest price, for example, you will get a lot of activity, but sometimes they're not the best clients, or like it could be a rough schedule, So
Yeah, there's a whole lot of factors when it comes to pricing, but to me, how much you work and the quality of work that you're doing just has an impact in just your psyche. For example, we have Chris Brown's regulation station at the shop, right? I have really good light. It's air conditioned. We have music playing. I don't mind regulating for 10 hours in that situation. I actually have a lot of fun doing it. I don't mind going to work. But that's a lot different than going into a client's basement, right? With like where I can't see, where it's, with so many other factors. Mm-hmm. So that does kind of matter too. And so if you find yourself that you're being burned out or you don't like going to work, well, maybe just kind of think about the kind of work you're trying to attract, what you want to do, and then ways to make it better. And sometimes price will change that, right? And also the reverse could be true. Like if you're doing like way too much concert work and that's too stressful for you, well, just kind of back down your price, and anyways, it's there's enough work out right now that we can kind of pick and choose what we want to do and how we want to do it. There's a lot of good stuff in the comments too that I'm not paying attention to.
Yeah, we'll pick up on those in a second. And let's see if we can get like one or two more people to answer this poll.
Yeah.
We got about half of people answering it, which is good. But yeah, let's check out the comments here. Let's see what we have. So we have, let's see here. We are rural, Appalachia. That's Nancy Salmon. And we are down to herself and two sons. Caveat is that they just lost their last of 3 piano stores, that's an interesting trend there. Piano stores are kind of disappearing. There are no dealers in the area. They do have 2 community colleges, 1 university, churches, and generally public schools only have 1 or 2 pianos, as opposed to a piano in every classroom when you started. Yeah, there's definitely these trends. Things are moving and shifting and changing. And it is fascinating the sort of disappearance of piano stores and how the approaches of dealing with that. And then also like there are still piano stores, right? And people are thriving and doing pretty well. Ty said low repeat, either low price, I think.
I think it's with low price.
Oh, low repeat with low price. Yeah. So you get those people, they don't want to pay a lot. They also don't want to get their piano tuned very often. Let's see. Russell said, someone said, if you start to not enjoy your job anymore, it's time to raise your prices. Found this to be true. Yeah, I think that, that's actually a really good point. There's 2 ways to go there. One is just change your job. Like, don't try to do something you don't enjoy. But I think sometimes that's really all there is to it. It's not that you don't enjoy what you do. Maybe you feel underappreciated. Maybe you feel like you're wasting your time. Or again, it's just not worth it, right? But if you were able to get paid a reasonable amount for it, you'd enjoy it. So, yeah, good point.
We're gonna have a guest on pretty soon that talks about selling pianos as a technician. I can speak to it some, but it'd be nice to have someone else come and talk about it because, like if your area just lost its, like last couple of piano stores, and you have this whole list of piano, players. That's a very useful avenue that you could be to your community, or you could just have a couple pianos rather than you keep in your living room even, right? But you're still facilitating new instruments into the community, rental pianos. We could talk about that sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I've just put, for those folks out on Facebook and YouTube, a message in the chat. We'll be signing off the live stream momentarily. So there is a link there. If you do want to try to join us on the Zoom call, you can just click on that, but we'll hop off the live stream for our sort of in-house session here momentarily. Thank you for participating. And then I'll get to the answers of the poll here. I guess we'll keep them secret from the socials. That'll be part of the value of jumping on. All right.